amazing podcast, and we're talking to Marvin Emetom, an actor, producer, and writer.
Stick around afterwards as we catch up on the most recent episode of Shōgun. Enjoy.
Marvin Emetom, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you, Tristan, for having me.
Yeah, where are you calling in from today?
Yeah, I'm calling in from Georgia.
Georgia, okay. Are you down there near Atlanta?
Yeah, I'm actually in Atlanta.
In Atlanta, okay. Well, that's a good place to be. That's where all the filming's going on these days, right?
I know, right? Yeah, no, it's been a very wonderful place to be at, just even outside of the acting world. The place is so beautiful. And from the acting world in general, the community here is large. Like, it's wonderful, very supportive. I love it here.
Did you grow up there?
I did not actually. I actually grew up in Dallas, Texas.
In Dallas, Texas. Wow. Two places I have never been. I've only flown into the airports, but I've always wanted to go. So I was just talking to someone about Atlanta the other day. I'm like, not just from, Donald Glover's series, but I'm like, it's been on my list for years. I used to live in North Carolina, but I've never made it down there. So you're selling it.
Yeah. Yeah, you should definitely check it out. Both cities, actually. They're great places to be.
Yeah. Is that why you made the move to Atlanta, or when did you move there?
Actually moved here. Wait, we're in 2024 now. Oh my goodness.
We are.
Yeah, I moved here late 2022. So going roughly a year and a half now.
That's nice. And I guess for all the people back home or anyone listening, you want to talk a little bit about your work. You are an actor, writer, and producer. Is that right?
Yeah, so my primary bread and butter is acting, but I also am a producer. I also am a director, cinematographer, writer, do a little editing. So kind of a jack of all trades.
That's awesome. Yeah, good. And like I said, it helps to know all those different areas and that kind of build each other up, right?
Right.
How did you first get into acting?
So I feel like this is going to be a bit of a story time right now. So
let's go for it.
So I guess in general, I first got into acting by just doing stuff at church growing up, and just skits that we would do at church. And that was kind of really the gist and length of where it went to as a kid. Growing up, we didn't have the resources or connections to really take it to this level. So growing up, it was kind of in the back of my mind, kind of an afterthought, for lack of better words. And I just kind of pursued sports as far as I could, and content with that career, was able to participate in college, go the whole route with that. And then it got to a period where, I'll never forget, February of 2018 happened. And all the Marvel fans out there know exactly what movie came out. But for the ones that don't know, that was the year that the first Black Panther came out.
Yeah.
And obviously, phenomenal movie. And I just remember watching the film, and I remember there was a particular part that came up. And you know how you have those internal thoughts in your head, but somehow it ends up leaving out for the world to hear? I had one of those moments. So I saw on the screen, and I looked again. I was like, that's my boy. Like, I saw my boy on the screen. Like, me and him grew up together. Like, same city and everything. And I was like, wow, like it was amazing to see. So immediately after that movie ended, I hit him up and was just trying to have him put me on game with everything. So he gave me the steps of what I needed to do, and now finally had my into the industry. So that's how I first got into acting on a professional level. And I haven't slowed down since.
That's impressive. Yeah, I mean, not only was that movie impactful to everybody nationwide, worldwide, but it got you into acting. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I was definitely fortunate to see, and I saw the midnight release of it too. The screening was so dope, but yeah, just being able to see my boy out there on the screen, it was like, okay, like, he's doing it for himself. I'm not sure what the process is to do it, but I've always had this vision outside of like sports and school that I've always wanted to be able to tap into the acting world, and to be able to see someone that like I grew up with was able to make it happen for himself. I'm like, I know it's a possibility for me. I just need to reach out to him and just get his words of wisdom to see what I need to do to make the proper steps. And I literally did that to the T. And like I said, I'm not at that level just yet, but I'm working my way up there. There's always room to improve, but just getting that info from him was a blessing for sure.
I bet. And just having someone that you knew who's done it must have helped, right?
Oh, 100%.
It makes it that much more attainable. And I mean, you don't have to share everything or any, if there's something truly secret or personal, don't share that. But what were some of those steps that he gave you that you had to take to kind of get to your first role?
Yeah, so the foundational piece was he told me to lock down onto at least 12 months of training. That way you have your fundamentals at least locked down, like scene study, just understanding how a script is constructed, how to be able to read it and be able to tap into the character in the manner that tells the story the best, or the way that it needs to be presented. Obviously, headshots are important. Being able just to get on set, even if it's as an extra, or even just tapping into like behind the scenes just to see what's going on, understand how a set is operated, just stuff like that. And when he was giving me the checklist, I was like, okay, I need to knock all this down. First thing is just to be able to find somewhere to do my training at. So I remember for 3 months, I was doing like heavy research into where I was doing this. And I guess to note, I was actually out in Arizona at this time. So I was out there in the Southwest market doing my research, trying to figure out what coaches I wanted to work with out there. And then in May, I encountered the Howie Acting Studio that had both Carla and the late, great Bill Howie. And they both in tandem were a great pair to help me get to where I'm at right now. They've taught me so much, and I carry all their lessons to this day. Everyone that's out in Arizona, definitely check out Howie Acting Studio. Carla Howie, she is amazing, okay? Take it from me, take it from everyone and anyone that has worked with them. And they really just break it down for you to where they don't answer it for you. They have you figure it out while guiding you to get to the answer yourself. And I love sharpshooters. I've never been the type person to like the sugarcoat. I've never been the one that likes to have people sugarcoat around me. Like, let me know if your boy's messing up. Let me know. If I'm doing something right, let me know. And I will take that as constructive criticism the way it should be, because in this industry, you're never going to be perfect. Like you'll do well, absolutely, but there will be times where you have like a little mess up, and like you got to take the coaching for what it is. And they never shorted you in that regard. So so yeah, like I got to thank them for that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about acting schools, you had, like you said, a little bit of experience with church and otherwise acting growing up. What do you feel like makes the difference in choosing an acting school or studio? Because I know, especially here in LA or New York, there's so many out there. Everyone needs a little something different. But what stuck out to you in addition to that constructive criticism and honesty?
That so for me, that was really the biggest thing was the transparency and the honesty. Like I'm someone that I've never liked to be around anybody that likes to just tell me I'm doing a good job, just to, like preserve like my feelings or anything like that. I've like if I did something wrong, like obviously address it, let me know where exactly it is, how I need to fix that, or if you're having me trying to figure out myself, give me a series of questions that'll lead me to that. And with both Bill and Carla, they were able to do just that. It was never beating around the bush. They're just like, hey, if you're crushing it, good job. And I know it's genuine. Well, Bill never really said like good job. Like he will say it, but not in a way where it's like, oh, you did a great job, buddy. He was like, not bad. Like just something along those lines. Like he would never just say like, excellent job, bravo. He was never that type of guy, but I loved him for that because he was unapologetically him. But at the same time, like if you knew you did something right, like he would say it in his own way that like you were in the right direction, but there's always room to improve at the same time. Because just because you crush it once, now can you do that again and again and again. So doing it once is just its own thing. But yeah, for me, it was just being able to be for them to just being able to be transparent, be able to have that honesty, guiding me to where I needed to be in my acting career to the best of their abilities. And like I said, I can't be any more grateful for what I've received from them out when I was out in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, and you can maybe speak to this more. It sounds like being a good sports player, team player, really transfers well into becoming a good actor between the repetitions, the practice, and then having that coachability.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, I think having that background really helped me take the constructive criticism very well, because it's just like in sports. Like your coaches are gonna get on your ass for every little thing, but they just
Yeah.
want to see you be great. And it really translated the exact same way when it came to coming into this industry. 100%.
Yeah, and walk us through the timeline. So you said February 2018, you see Black Panther have this moment. You go down to Arizona, go to the acting school. How soon after that did you get on your first shorts or your first commercials or music videos? What did you do right after then?
Yeah, so like I said, I was out in Arizona. Like, so right after college, I had finished college out in Texas. I attended the University of Texas, El Paso. Minor gang, let's go. But yeah, so I left out to Arizona. I had like a little like stint at the professional level, nothing like super serious. Honestly, sometimes I don't even really consider it a career, but just be able to at least just put on pads for the one time was an awesome experience. That's actually what brought me out to Arizona. Ended that on my own terms. I I went through the whole route, corporate America, have white collar jobs, blue collar jobs, just living life and kind of existing. And then February of 18 came into the picture. That's when a new fire in the back of my head kind of relit up. So that happened. Research for schools. May of 18 was when I attended my first class at the Howie Atkins studio. And through there, I met some great people. Shout out to the Howie gang. But yeah, I was able to get connections through them on projects. We even did a couple stuff together. I've done some stuff at the college out there over at Arizona State. They would have stuff out there. So I used that as an opportunity to get on set, even if it was like for like extra work, or whatever the case may be. My first project outside of a student film was actually out in LA. That was it kind of was and kind of wasn't a speaking role, but that was my first on-set project outside of like a student film. My first speaking role was January of 19. Yeah, that was
Okay.
for like an action film, which was actually pretty cool. Yeah, that was honestly a surreal experience because I was not really expecting to get lines so soon within my first year, but it was really cool to just be able to get that opportunity and really put my training up to that point on camera.
Yeah.
And first commercial, oof, boy, I'm really trying to think. I think that was in like later in 2019, if I remember correctly. I just remember it was for U-Haul, which was really cool. But yeah, it was like 19 or 20. I can't exactly remember when, but I remember being on set. And to tell the truth, I wasn't even supposed to have a speaking role for that. But when I was on set, I kind of just got caught up like, hey, you want to say some lines on camera? I was like, yeah, why not? And that's kind of what happened. So yeah, every opportunity, no matter how big or small, I've just been grateful to have the opportunity just to be on set because whether I did have a speaking role or I didn't, I was always watching for what the other actors were doing in front of the camera. I was also watching the crew behind the camera. I was making genuine connections with people just so I can keep up with them and their careers because I support everyone in their careers. Like everyone's timeline is different in this crazy game, but when it's all said and done, I'm always rooting for each and every one of them. So I always make sure that like I know who they are from like a personal level and just like I support them through and through, you know. So this journey has just been nothing short of a blessing, man.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're always staying open. You're never shying away, and you seem to be prepared. Like you're talking about going on set, someone says speaking role, and you're ready to go. So that sounds like the kind of not only work ethic, but the right attitude to stay for the longevity of these careers that it takes to be an actor, writer, producer, right?
Right. Yeah. All I can do is just try and just control what I can control, which is to not be of a deterrence of any kind. Whether it's like not being prepared for something, even though they gave me a script a month in advance, or just being a hassle, or just being bugging people on set when they need to prepare. Like I just try to be as professional as possible, no matter the level of set or budget the set is dealing with.
Yeah, and I know everyone deals with it a little bit differently, but you just mentioned, how do you prepare for an audition or for your first day on set? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so preparing for auditions. So I'll start with that one. So
Yeah.
I know there's people out there, and I believe it's where they'll like read the story. That way they get a feel for it, and then they'll understand the lines. I I actually do it backwards. So
Okay.
I actually get the lines down, and then I'll read the story. That way I can get the emotional feel for it, and I kind of translate that the same way as life. Like most of us are articulate enough to figure out what we're going to say at the heat of the moment. There's some people that'll prepare to say something before it even happens, but when that moment happens, how you want to present it is completely different. So I like to have the words understand what I am saying, and then when I read the story, like I'm obviously in that moment. And
Yeah.
like I said, in that moment, just like in life, you may or may not know exactly what you're going to say. And if you do know what you're going to say, it may not come out, whether it's like the tonage, whether it's like how you draw out the words, like it may not come out exactly how you thought it would. So I'll read the story. And then when I see those particular parts where like I have a reaction, then I'll recite that line with that feeling. So
Yeah.
that's how I personally prepare for an audition. Um, I'm not going to sit here and say that it is like foolproof. I'm not sure if there is a foolproof way. I just feel like as long as you are able to tap into the story via whatever script you're given, then you're doing your job. That's my opinion on that. Now, arriving on set, I don't want to call myself a method actor because I'm not, but I do like to have moments of connection,
Yeah.
depending on like our dynamic. I've been in on sets where I'll have like a best friend, and like we're obviously like catching up. So like I'll literally kick it with them like majority of the morning before we actually get on set. I've had sets where I've had to play like the significant other to the female actor, and I'll have moments of connections where like I'll walk up to them, I'll have them like go like separate from like everyone else, and then I'll literally just ask them first off, so you're just making sure that like everything, because consent is everything. But I'm like, hey, do you trust me? And like they'll be like, yeah. And I'll like, all right, just let me guide you through this. And like I'll like give them like a big hug or something, and just like sit there for like 30 seconds, maybe hold their hand, just like get like that connection. And like they're obviously okay with this because like I've talked in advance, and like they kind of understand like where my mindset is with this. But I just like to be able to connect in a way that relates to the character of the story. That way, when I go in front of the camera, at that point, you're not this person that I know in the real world. You are now this character, and this is our relation, and this is how I see you for the rest of the day. That's how I prepare going in the first day of set.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really in tune with connecting the emotion with those key story elements in your character, which, I mean, it just sounds like that would deliver the right kind of performance, and also you feel right about it when the day is done, right?
Right. I would believe so. Like I mean, at this point, I mean, for all the projects I have done, it hasn't failed me yet. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
There you go. Well, let's talk about, you've moved, you said you started in acting. When did you start first, your first screenplay? Was that something that you wrote for yourself because you wanted to act in it, or have you always written?
So the first script that I wrote was actually in Arizona, and I wanted to do some projects out there of my own. There was one that did get started. Unfortunately, it didn't finish, and I kind of wish it did because the person I was working with, incredible actor. That's my boy. Like, and I see him, he's doing great things, and I'm proud of him for that. But it was also during the pandemic, so there was just like a lot of stuff that was going on, and it just didn't happen the way that it should have. But I've had like a couple scripts that was written at the time, and it just didn't come to fruition, which is fine. It also just shows that, especially in 2020, there wasn't really much going on, but I also knew that I didn't want to wait for opportunities to come my way. If they came, great, but I always like to stay proactive in any way I can, even if it's creating those opportunities for myself. So I didn't even get the chance to really get a script going start to finish until I moved out to Atlanta. And I couldn't be more grateful because the person, my good friend and business partner with our production, she has been grateful. We have such a similar mindset when it comes to how we're looking to operate just every aspect of this company. And it also does help when you're able to find people that also share that vision. She as well is also a writer. She's directed, produced. So we align really well to be able to make things happen. And we even have another project that's already in pre-production right now. But long story short, I've written, I think it started in 2020. Yeah, it did start in 2020. It didn't actually happen, which was okay, but you still have those under your belt if you need to like tap into those and like actually put that on camera. But that's when it started for me. It was a couple years after I started my acting career.
Yeah, and I saw, at least on IMDb, you're working on a project X's and O's. Is that the one that's in pre-production right now?
No, that's the one that's in post production. We
Oh,
actually
okay.
have, yeah, that one's in post right now. So we actually have another one that officially we have announced in pre production this week. So we're getting the team together. We're looking for one more role for the cast side. But yeah, we're just trying to get all that together so we can get that project going too. So yeah, it's looking strong for 2024 already for us.
Staying busy already for this year, yeah.
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, what did you learn on X's and O's, knowing that's already in post production? What did you learn from the writer, actor, and producer side, getting to kind of touch all three areas?
So X's and O's, X's and O's honestly showed me that, like I said, I've never been the one to wait for opportunities. And then especially with 2020 happening, at this point, like we're in an era where the actors of today are probably one of the most resilient groups of actors we've encountered in probably a very, very long time. So being able to see this process from a production standpoint, just really piecing together from the start who we're going to have collectively to get this vision on camera, the actual production day of being able to get all this situated. And it did help to have people that were knowledgeable in their respective fields. So it was just one less hat for me and my business partner to worry about when we were on set. But just going through the motions, first and foremost, everybody out there, especially in the industry, I give your crew the most utmost respect. They are
Yep.
some of the hardest workers that I have ever seen, not even just on this set, but on any set. They are the first to get there and the last to leave, okay? They are the reason why the people in front of the camera be looking and sounding good, all right? So shout out to all the crew members out there. But seeing that whole process, it makes you appreciate the art more because you're not just looking at it as just an actor. You actually look at it from a collective. It's like a cake. You know what I'm saying? Like you have the cake and you know what the cake is supposed to look like, but you need all the ingredients. You need the flour, you need the eggs, you need the sugar, you need, if you choose to use dye of some sort, or food coloring. You got to piece everything together to create this beautiful concoction in which we all know it as cake. And when you understand the process, you appreciate the work that you put out that much more.
Yeah, I remember I worked on I PA'd on a little film when I first came out to LA, and it was mind blowing to me that I was always like, okay, a movie happens, you're playing pretend, you got some places, you're good. No, no, no. Yeah, 14 to 16-hour days, maybe longer when you're doing set dressing. And to your point, that trust, respect, and appreciation is the glue that holds that set together because you don't know what anyone's getting paid or where they're coming from or what they're doing. If it's their first job in a week or, 10 months. And it's really impressive, to your point, to see all those little ingredients come together from someone keeping people or, keeping them off the set or keeping the set quiet all the way down to the AD to the camera operator. It's an impressive puzzle to see, and it must be cool for you to be on the producing side too.
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. And like I said, it's great to have a business partner that, like I said, we're so aligned that we trust one another's judgments on everything. Everyone that we bring on board, everyone has different visions for their production, but ours runs strictly on trust and transparency. You got to be able to trust the peers that you're around. If you don't, then why would you bring them on to begin with? But yeah, we knew that everyone that we had on set, we can trust them to do their job. And like I said, it's just one less hat that we had to wear on set. So we didn't have to worry about that. We just had to focus on just being in front of the camera and then let everyone else be great,
Yeah. Now that you're in this post-production stage, how involved are you in things like editing, making the final cuts, picking the music? Is that something you're doing, or is that more of a director's role?
So I was doing the editing piece. That was all that I was really doing. So we have someone, and like I said, if I wanted to, I could have, but like I said, we're all a team. So I'll help where it's needed to be. But my primary role in the post-production was just to do the editing, the chopping of the videos. We had somebody designated for audio. We had somebody else designated for color grading, but it's just great to be able to see it get all pieced together. Now, I'm still waiting for the audio guy to finish the audio, but from a vision standpoint, like the visuals, elite.
In a great place. There you go.
I'm impressed.
So what's the next step? I mean, I know you've done some shorts like we've talked about already. Where do you find is the best place for those to live? I mean, do you put them on a Vimeo or YouTube? Have you gone into the festival circuit yet? What's that process like?
Yeah, so I'll speak in particularly to X's and O's. So I know we're planning to tap into a couple film festivals. The distribution, I believe we're looking to see what is the best route for us in regards to that. We haven't necessarily talked about Vimeo just yet, but it's not eliminated.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're just looking to tap into all avenues. I do know for certain that we're looking to tap into a couple film festivals, and then we're planning to do a showcase as well.
Okay. And how does social media play into that? I mean, are you sharing behind the scenes footage? Do you feel like that's a way you've found crew or just kind of got the word out a little more?
Yeah, so we use social media to our advantage, and obviously word of mouth, because Atlanta is a huge, huge acting market. So sometimes it'll be through social media. Sometimes it's just encountering people at work, because a lot of people that you encounter are in the industry in some degree. So you kind of talk with them. Like I said, I'm big on building genuine connections. So I don't like to, when I hear that, I don't like to have our conversation be transactional. I like it to be more of an interaction than a transaction. So I'll be like, okay, that's cool. I'll get to that later on, but I want to like continue like what we were talking about earlier. Like you were talking about X, Y, Z, Alpha, Omega, whatever the conversation was about, and then we'll tap back into that, and then I'll figure out like what exactly you do in the industry, and then we can go from there to see if our roads mesh, and if they don't, I still support you. It does not change anything. But if they do mesh, then yeah, let's figure it out. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I've heard that from so many different people up and down the industry of just who you know and keeping up those connections and being someone who's a hard worker and pleasant to work with. We just interviewed and published the episode with this guy named Stephen Morrow. He's a sound mixer and he's done 158 films at this point, not including
Wow.
stuff in, college and stuff like that before, but it's just crazy to hear him talk about things like becoming buddies with Bradley Cooper while working on A Star Is Born, and it becomes like a family set. And then he's back for The Mule, and now he's back for Maestro, and you know, it's that kind of connection and that the good spirit and the good work ethic that seems to really keep you involved in some of the better and best projects out there. For
Yeah,
you
for sure.
specific, I was going to say, yeah, for you specifically, now that you've done writing, producing, acting, is there one of the three that you think you might take more on in the next 5 years? Do you see yourself more as an actor or otherwise?
Oh yeah, 100% actor. That's like I said, that's my bread and butter. But
Yeah.
I've also never liked to stay linear. So I've always wanted to just see what other elements are in the industry. So that's how I got curious in regards to writing, directing, producing, the whole nine. And in the next 5 years, it's possible that I could take on a few more uh, projects as a director, or maybe I'll just have a couple screenplays out there. Like you never know what the future holds. But if I were to classify myself as just solely one thing, it would definitely be an actor. That's just where my heart lays. And the other stuff is great to have that knowledge. Is definitely a way to gain more opportunity for myself, whether it's like producing my own stuff or working with somebody else. But I just loved being able to tell stories, man. It's a beautiful thing. It's kind of like music. It's a way of expression. And the one thing about acting is you can do that while being yourself, and still it's a interesting blend of how you do it. But you could be yourself and be the character all at the same time, and give that character a sense of originality, but at the same time stay true to who that character is. I think that's amazing, man.
That sounds so good. Yeah. Infusing a little bit of yourself at every single one, so at the end of the day, it's a you performance. It's not just disappearing into a character.
Right. Now, obviously, biopics are a whole different story, which
Of
I actually had
course.
an experience doing a biopic, which was incredible. But it worked out because even speaking with the guy, I ended up playing the lead role for that biopic, and I got to be able to get in contact with that guy. And it was, if there was a mirror in front of me, it was literally, we were the same type of person. Like type A, no, don't sugarcoat, just sharpshooter. Yeah. And when we were reading through the initial script, I just remember looking at some of this stuff and I was like, okay, you want me to tell it true to how you would, right? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, cool. So I saw that, just knowing you, I will say this, but maybe a little bit differently. I'm letting you know right now, I'm not saying that. That is just not like and
Yeah.
I told him this straight up. And he was like, you know what? They picked the right person for this role. And
That's
that's
awesome.
what it was. And I got to meet him on set. It, like I said, it was like looking at a mirror, just like from a attitude standpoint. Like we're just two men who were just simply existing, trying to get the job done and get out. That's what it was. And it was such an honor to be able to play him for that film. I'm excited for that one to come out as well.
And what's that one called?
So that one is called The Eighth Round. So they got that. I did that out in South Carolina, which was honestly cool. I didn't realize how green South Carolina was actually. But yeah, I'm looking forward for that film to come out. Just a beautiful story. Yeah, when that comes out, I'll definitely let you know for sure, and everyone else
Yeah.
that is following me on IG. So
Yeah, I was gonna say I love having people on right before a project comes out. Maybe we'll get your producing partner to come on next time too. But just interesting to always hear those stories like you just told him, meeting the real guy behind the scenes and knowing you're the right actor for the job and he knew it too has gotta be a good feeling.
oh yeah, for sure.
Well, I guess my last question before we head out today is knowing that you want to be an actor, that you are an actor, and you want to continue, having good stories, exciting roles, interesting, different takes and different ways you can kind of act. Who are some directors that you would love to work with? Who are you kind of like, this is on my vision board, my goals. I really, if this something comes up, I got to work with this person.
So that's a it's a funny question because there's a lot of great directors out there, but for me, it's not more so the director because I feel like I'm very adaptable. So, and
Yeah.
every director has a different style of how they want things done, which whoever it is, I'm willing to do it as long as it doesn't affect my morals, it's ethical and legal, I'm doing it. But it's more so actors that I see myself wanting to work with, like big name actors. Like I see myself working with like Will Smith, Michael B. Jordan, Lakeith Stanfield, Mike Coulter. Like that's me personally. And I do believe at some point in time it will happen. I just want to be able to be in their presence really for two reasons. One, because it would give me an opportunity to look at actors over the course of the years since I've been alive that I've actually enjoyed watching. And not to say that these are the only ones, because there's a lot of other great actors, but these are just
For
the ones
sure.
off the top of my head that I can think of. And then two, just watching their process of how they operate on set. That's really the biggest thing for me because yeah, like from a director side, like I said, I could list many directors. But to be honest, like I said, my primary thing is acting.
Yeah.
So I look more at people who are in front of the camera and just want to watch their process, how they operate, get their words of wisdom. That way I can carry that throughout my career. And honestly, whoever I get a chance to work with, whether it's in the next 5 years, even if it takes 20 years, I do not care. I just feel it's going to happen. And when it does happen, I'm not going to take that for granted. That's for sure.
Well, it sounds like you got that resolve and a promise, and it's going to happen. And especially talking about people, I mean, you just mentioned Michael B. Jordan. Those who, like you, have acted, written, and directed. I mean, Creed 3 was amazing, right?
For sure.
Must be good to have people like that who you talked about in front of the camera, who then get to step behind it and get to tell the story on both sides.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's very inspiring to say the least.
Yeah. Well, before I guess one last question before we go, what have you seen recently that you've really loved or that's inspired you or stuck with you?
So so you want to know something really funny. So
Let's hear
I
it.
and I think this is more of stemming through just like how I grew up. So there was a period of time where like obviously like cable was a thing, like we would watch a lot of cable TV, and then there was a period where we just did not have cable. So then we resulted to whatever movies we had at the house, whether it was a VHS, DVD, whatever the case
Yeah.
may be. So in the past, it was like a lot of films that I would see, like obviously a lot of comedies for sure. Rush Hour trilogy to this day is still my favorite trilogy of all time. I don't care
Yep.
what anybody says. Like Star Wars, yeah, sure, but for me, yeah, Rush Hour, that was it for Rush Hour 2 in particular. But saw movies like that, and then even like I've even seen a couple like international movies. Just spending time with my mom, she always had these stack of Nigerian movies, which was actually pretty dope because I was able to see it from like a different world. Like now, obviously, it wasn't as quote unquote Hollywood as the movies that we see today, but that's also what kind of sparked the interest for me because it's like, okay, it's not at this level, but they're still able to get it out into the world. So like
Yeah.
I would watch actors and most of these people probably do or don't know who these are, but I would watch the likes of Jim Ike, Ramsey Noah, Desmond Elliott, those actors throughout the period of time and just like watch with my mom. So like those were the stuff that I was watching mainly as a kid. Recently, a couple of shows that I've seen that kind of stood out to me. Lupin, I like that series. Lupin is pretty dope. And I know I'm kind of late to the ballpark with this one, but I just got on the train for Power. So Power
Oh
is
yeah.
phenomenal. I don't know why it's taking me so long to get onto that. Man, that series is incredible. But yeah, those are some of the stuff that I've been watching and I've just been dialed in, man.
Consuming good stories, wherever they come from, must help your storytelling process, as well as keeping that mindset of always thinking about what works, what doesn't, what do you like, what do you want to display, and that emotion there.
Yeah, man, that's it right there.
Well, it sounds like you've already been working hard. You've had a good journey thus far, and you're only going up and up. We'll definitely connect again, and excited to see more of your things coming out this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, man.
Thanks again, Marvin. All right, Madison, let's talk about Shōgun episode 4.
This was a good episode. I feel like this is storytelling in series. It goes through peaks and valleys where you have a lot of stuff happen, and then you have like episodes that are a little bit more calm where you can focus in on our characters. And I feel like this was an episode that focused in on actual character development and like storytelling. This is where Orn essentially gets his own. He talked his way into training Toranaga's men on how to use the cannons and the European weaponry. And he gets his own household now, and he gets his own staff. And there's just some good moments for some good character development in this episode.
Yeah, Blackthorn, our Anjin-sama, if you will. It's fun to see him get shocked about having a house and a consort, Fuji-sama.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Mariko-sama is staying with him in the same house. There's just a lot of things that must have been odd for a London seaman, a London pirate, merchant, whatever you want to call him, being given courtesies. But like he says, it's just another prison for him. He feels like he's stuck. He doesn't have his men. He doesn't have his ship. He's a man built for the ocean. He doesn't feel at home on land, especially not this land. But I do love in that scene where he first arrives at the house, he walks out into the rain, pissed off, and is just pouting, angry at the situation, and Fuji's watching him. Mariko-sama comes over and they start talking, and the first thing she says is, "It's not auspicious, it's not right to stand on the moss. Don't do that." And even though he's mad, he hops on the rock. And that's like the point of character development that I really love in the first bit of, even if he's frustrated, even if he doesn't understand what's happening, he does show a little more respect, and he is trying, which is nice to see.
Yeah, I'd say my favorite parts of this show, and especially this episode, are the moments where they're the moments that come after the moments where there's a clash of culture, and Blackthorn's always, well, this isn't how I did it, blah, blah, blah. And he's like grandstanding and being European, which is another way of saying almost he's being American. Yeah. But then there's these moments afterwards where he's gotten the frustration out of his system, where there's a lot of humility in his approach to the characters around him, not just the characters, but the surrounding around him. There's that moment where he gifts to Fuji-sama his gun, and she's like, "What am I supposed to do with this?" And Mariko's like, "It's a gift. Please take it."
Trying to be nice.
Yeah, and then she goes and gifts him the swords that used to belong to her now dead husband. Yeah, her father.
The family swords, correct.
Yeah, the family swords. And it's just this really, you can tell, it's just a very human moment that crosses cultural divides. And I think that's where this show's at its, those are at least my favorite moments of the show, are where you get past the initial culture clash, but then the softer moments where it's, okay, we certainly are different in our cultures, but let's approach each other as humans. And there's a lot of misunderstanding. There's a lot of forgiveness for the misunderstandings that's going on. And I appreciate that so far.
Yeah, I like this. This to me was a very quotable episode as well. There's a lot of wisdom being shared. And I feel like when we watch Blackthorn on horseback and he's trying to learn the right words, or he's sitting in front of the chief of the fief, I don't think that's what it's called, the leader of that fief.
Fief chief?
We love a good fief chief. And Mariko says, "Why are you explaining a battle you weren't even alive for 40 years ago? What are you doing?" And just the paradigm shift of, oh, there's no value in that. This is what we do and where I come from, but it's no value here. It needs to be something that I have experience in. And I like that he kind of pivots to say, you should have a good Navy. Let's learn about cannons. Let's do this. Let's do that. It's cool to see him use his skills and talents and pivot in a different way. But then we see it in the same way of vulnerability when he goes to the hot spring, he hops in, Mariko-sama shows up and she talks about her own experience and his experience, and there's just a very vulnerable sharing there that I think is great to see, that soft side of not just rough, tough all the time. He also loves a good walk by the Thames where you can forget yourself. And he loves talking about the beauty of the city he lived in, and he does miss it. So it's nice to see that, not just dichotomy, but more like it's a multifaceted character. It's really rounded out.
Yeah. And that's really, the title of the episode is called The Eightfold Fence, which is this idea that Mariko-sama posits to Blackthorn, which is, at least as far as I understood, it was like, look, Blackthorn, every moment that you have is just you on your sleeve. Like you're never, that's the European way, at least as demonstrated in this show, is just, they are who they are, and they're going to be very emotional and passionate and like really like loud. And she says the eightfold fence is the thing that we keep between us and the world. And we might look really calm and serene on the outside, but on the inside, we can use the eightfold fence to retreat to our serenity on the inside of us. And you can tell that there's some wisdom in that, but also there's some cultural trauma that's in that as well, that it's not safe to be your full self all the time. And so there's a wall that they've erected between them and the rest of the world at all times. And in that hot spring scene, you can see that Blackthorn might be utilizing the eightfold fence a little bit, and Mariko-sama is letting her eightfold fence go down a little bit in that scene. And that was a really good storytelling device, I thought.
Yeah, and of course it harkens back to the Eightfold Path of Buddhism. But I do love the parody, I guess I'd say, because the Eightfold Path being the right view, resolve, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. And now seeing those are the fences they put up. Never distracted, never mindless, never lacking in effort, never low in livelihood, which when he tries to greet the gardener earlier, she said, "Oh, you do not say sama to the gardener. You do not show respect to a person not doing the right livelihood." I think it's interesting, the idea of setting up those fences as a coping mechanism, and yet maybe losing sight of what the Eightfold Path truly is by doing that. I like this idea of learning from each other and coming down. Because, of course, this is not a spoiler, but it is Mariko that comes to Blackthorn in the night, right?
Yeah.
For a little coitus in the darkest. And the next morning, they're all sitting out there. Fuji's nice and quiet. Blackthorn's sitting there just enjoying the backyard. Mariko-sama sits down and she's like, "Oh, you're real chipper." And he's like, "Yeah, there's a reason for that." And she goes, "Oh, yeah, that's the companion we sent to you." And you see him sitting there going, "Wait." And of course I laughed. I was like, is this racial blindness? Did we all just miss this? Is this just a bad face blindness? But no, he had to really think about, oh, she's back behind that fence.
It's the fence, yeah.
There's no way she's going to hop that fence the first night. Okay.
Absolutely not, no.
Not with the barbarian.
No, not with the barbarian, yeah. Yeah, no, so I'm loving the show so far. And in this episode specifically, I think there were a few like montage sequences, like really subtle montage sequences, and some exposition shots of just like the rain in the backyard, or the stones in the Zen garden, or just like really peaceful moments with nature or with the house or whatever. And it harkens back to a Miyazaki Ghibli-esque way of telling a story that's like, oh, this story that we're watching is grounded in this environment. And I think that while I'm sure the other episodes probably have had some of this, I noticed it more in this episode.
Yeah, it is just a very pretty backdrop for what's about to be a very ugly war.
Yes.
And I like that we're having those scenes, which, you know what, I think to some viewers who are maybe less interested in the vibe, the feeling, the emotions brought in by a scene, it could seem extraneous and useless. Like, why are you throwing that in there? But I think if you're able to take yourself for just a moment and say, what is the director trying to tell you or show you in an emotional way, not just a direct translation, here's the words, this is exactly what's happening. It's not blank exposition. It's reminding you, oh, there's a beauty, there's a piece. You're falling in love with Japan as you're watching the show, like Blackthorn is, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Hop back in his shoes.
But then it's also juxtaposed against Mariko-sama and Blackthorn are having a conversation above the ocean And then an earthquake hits.
Yeah.
And Blackthorn is freaking out. He's like, what the hell is this? And then Mariko is just like, it's just an earthquake. And she's like, our houses are designed to fall down and be built up again really quickly. And you can tell that there's some layers there to not just the earthquakes, but that like the pace in which violence can just roll through a village and destroy everything. And then they need to rebuild is just like the background to these people's lives. And then you can understand more why they need the eightfold fence that kind of is an operative boundary between them and the violence that exists in their countryside.
Yeah, I think especially with our reviewing of the Masters of the Air series for the last 10 weeks, it definitely is on the same point of when things are so difficult or so filled with grief and trauma, you have to have a different attitude. Theirs is definitely bury it behind an eightfold fence. But I think it is interesting because, yeah, like you just gave that quote, houses are designed to be built as quickly as they're destroyed. And she mentions tsunamis and fires and all these different afflictions that happen in Japan. And it's this resilience, but you lose some humanity in being too resilient every time. There's no time to mourn. Fuji doesn't get to mourn her husband and her child that have been chopped up. It's just too much burying that then leads to moments like we see at the end of the episode with Toranaga's son, Nakakato, deciding on his own, with a little help from a spy and some other people influencing him, decides to turn the cannons on Jozen, who is Lord Ishido's warrior, sent to inspect the cannons, and just blows them to absolute bits.
Talk about... They're just like popped like gushers.
Yeah. I was watching it. My fiance was doing some work sitting next to me. And as it started, I was like, don't turn and look at the screen. Whatever you do right now, just don't.
No. Yeah. Yeah. That was a moment where I was like, oh no, this is like a little boy who needs to prove himself. And he's done something unforgivable that you just can't take back. And because we almost see a baby version of this play out earlier on, where Fuji-sama's husband is the one that speaks out in the room, and Toranaga's like, oh, shut your mouth. What are you doing? And then he commits seppuku. And then with this one, you're like, what? With his own son, essentially declaring war. Oh, what's the recourse here? It's crazy.
Yeah. And it was not fun. It's interesting seeing how intense they're going to get with the blood and gore, with the cannons just destroying these men.
Yeah.
I had wondered, I was like, oh, we've seen some heads roll already. We've seen a couple other things that have been bloody, but this was something else. So it's going to get pretty dirty.
Those guys just popped like grapes. And the general guy who got attacked, he's laying there basically missing all of his arms and legs. And he's like, it's dishonorable to fight with these weapons that shoot from afar. And essentially the only honorable way to kill someone is up close and personal, which like, I get that. There's, especially when we talk about Masters of the Air, like those guys, they had to suffer a burden and like anonymously killing hundreds, if not thousands of people. And they never got to see their faces. And there's like there's trauma in killing no matter what. But having the intimacy of the swords up in your face certainly changes it so that you aren't doing violence like willy-nilly.
Yeah, he says, his exact quote is, "This is not how a samurai fights, you savages." Which is interesting to now see Toranaga's son Nakakato and anyone who's on his side just clumped in with Blackthorn, Anjin.
Yeah.
It's a becoming more like the perceived enemy, and now that he's your ally, becoming more like him. Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they balance, because we know at this time, they've already had guns, they've already had cannons for a little while from the Portuguese. I want to see how this is going to change, because Mariko-sama is not excited. She specifically says it is war. She's shaking. She stops Blackthorn from going in there and stopping or pausing anything. Instead, it's become a matter of behind the eightfold fence. This is an action which is you're not able to come back from.
Yeah.
You have to now commit to it. You have committed the first act of war. You're in it. There's no negotiating out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm excited to see where the rest of the series goes. I'm still just in love with it. It's fantastic.
I'm going to tell you what. I'm still frustrated by everyone saying it is Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
While there is a throne or a group of thrones at play has a very different tone to me, and it's a different story. But I saw articles from Esquire and otherwise saying it's back. This is officially Game of Thrones again. Okay, whatever. People need to watch it. But yeah. I've seen more people watching it. More people have messaged me after they've listened to some of our episodes saying what they liked. I'm hoping it continues on this path, and I think it will. The writing is fantastic. The filming is fantastic. I'm excited to see what happens in episode 5.
No, this is just like where I think what the Game of Thrones comparison is just like when we were talking about with Dune. Dune is what you get when everything is hitting on all cylinders. Everything from the effects to the writing to the acting to the set design, like whatever. Everything's hitting on all cylinders. And I think that's what the feeling of Shōgun is, that everything is hitting on all cylinders, and it is a one cohesive, beautiful work of art.
And it pays off. And I think that's what I wish more streamers would take note on when they do their shows. You have to pay the right people, and then everyone's going to love it. When you half-ass it and you go for 60, 70 million, and then you're paying writer with almost no credits, or it's a fine script, everyone's got their finger in it. It shows, and the audience knows, and we're able to pick out. We have a good BS filter. There's just no way to cut around that. So yeah, good job to everybody. I will say we have reached out to a couple people, and we may have someone on from Shōgun soon. I have reached out to their PR contact, so we've got some behind the scenes folks involved. So look out for that. And thank you again for everybody listening. We've got another episode of our Masters of the Air debrief series coming out, focused on the documentary, The Bloody 100th, now on Apple TV+. So until then, watch good movies and TV.